I'm Joseph,
And I'm Nick.
and this is Fish Jelly. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah,
Are you happy to be home?
I am. I'm. It's always happy to come back to you.
Oh, yeah. Likely story. I feel like in the inevitable court battle we'll have years from now, you'll bring up these recordings about how sweet and kind you were.
Well, I am.
Or like in my murder trial, they'll have a...
Oh boy. Well, no, that's not. I mean, I don't know what you're doing out there to somebody else, but it's not going to be me. I'm not about to get hemmed up.
So today it's going to be all things can, but I feel like we need to continue with the Drag Race All-Star 6 saga. So episode 6.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to catch up.
I'm still
with
having a
that.
difficult time talking, so excuse me.
You are eloquent as ever.
But episode 6, the challenge was like a play on American Horror Story,
Oh yeah, that was that. Okay.
where the remaining queens took characters and made them their own. All right, so what did you think?
It was that was a little crunchy.
It was a little crunchy, yeah.
I think I'm curious as to why some of their more polished performers, like Pandora, I thought did really well, but gets actually absolutely no screen time.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I am very pleased with Pandora's performance thus far, but so I had commented that I like how she seems to just be focusing on the job at hand.
Yeah,
which is to be the best drag queen she can be, and she's doing that. But then because she's not being ridiculous, she gets no screen time.
Yeah, they're not cutting to her, which is unfortunate. But beyond that, it was an interesting idea that I thought ended in like a lot of these Drag Race episodes, it's just kind of feeling hokey.
So Jan played like the Leah Michelle character, like this musical theater, annoying, sucks all the air out of the room type character. So she did a good job with that. Ginger played like the young, like bright-eyed. I guess she's like, I don't watch American Horror Story, but I guess she kind of mimicked Emma Roberts' character,
I guess
which was kind of awkward because
I don't know that she is so distinct that registered to me.
But Ginger did a fine job. But I thought the real star was Kylie.
Yeah, she was transfixing. Yeah.
She was channeling Glenn Close. I thought
Well, Jessica Lange.
Jessica Lange, sorry. Yeah, she was channeling Jessica Lange. She looked great.
Oh yeah, that Southern belle.
Yeah, her manner of speech is really...
And then they even have a cat on a hot tin roof reference, which is kind of, Jessica Lange is also kind of channeling, that Tennessee Williams, Liz Taylor of the 50s as well.
Yeah. In the bottom were Akira and Raja,
Unfortunately.
which I thought was appropriate.
Well, I mean,
Who did worse than those two?
I know, but
Yeah.
Raja's kind of my favorite. So.
Raja's my favorite as well, but I think Akira, this is her third time in the bottom.
Sure.
She really hasn't been delivering, like... Even in her season, I think she performed better.
Sure. I think it's just unfortunate that there are people there that I don't like at all, like Jan. Like, you could go home. So I think it's unfortunate to see somebody that I find more deserving of more screen time. But.
So Kylie wins. She has to lip sync against Manila Luzon as the lip sync assassin, which I thought was like, I don't consider Manila a lip sync assassin. She's won a couple lip syncs, but I don't think she's good at it. Kylie wins, gets her little 10,000, and she sends home Akira. I thought that was fair.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, moving on to the... Oh, unless you have something else.
No.
Okay, so moving on to the Cannes Film Festival. I'm going to do something different this time since I get the sense that you think I'm always trying to pressure you when really I'm just trying to direct. But I'm going to let you have 55 minutes to talk about Cannes. So I'll let you organize it how you want to. Well, I suspect you'll talk about the experience being there, your favorites, your least favorites, COVID testing, the award ceremony. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, That's a lot. There's a lot.
It is a lot, but you're so good at organizing your time. So let's go.
I am good at organizing my time. Is that a read?
No, let's hear. You have 54 minutes to talk about all those things.
Well, okay, so let's. I've seen 74 films in the program, and reviewed 30 of them, which is actually, quite a feat. Every day I saw between 5 or 6 films. One day I did see 4 because I just was exhausted and had to, eat. But yeah, trying to go do all of those things in a normal year is one thing, but there was kind of an added stress and anxiety as well, because any non-Europeans, if you're vaccinated, you can't, they wouldn't recognize your vaccination card. They wouldn't give you a QR code. So everybody that was non-European had to go to this tent kind of, a few meters away from the Palais and spit in a tube or, have something shoved up your nose every day for a COVID test. It technically have to be every 48 hours, but because it would take 6 hours, trying to organize your time, it just was safest to get tested every day. So, but at the same time, if you were to test positive, you'd have to quarantine for 2 weeks. So it could have been stuck in France. Also, you couldn't go keep seeing films. But the strange thing is, you only had to show that to get into the press screenings or in the Palais itself. So I could literally go to any other theater in France and have COVID, and it doesn't matter. And that goes for all of the French people that are vaccinated that could have had breakthrough viruses, can spread it willy-nilly because they aren't getting tested every day. There was just kind of that level of frustration. And then on the DL, friends of a friends of a friend said they're giving out these health passes, so you can go get that and then sidestep this having to get tested every day. So I got a health pass very early on. Within 2 days, Variety had published an article about it, and then all of a sudden the festival saying, no, we're not recognizing these health passes. But because they hadn't organized how or who they'd given them out to, some people were told to bring theirs back, and then others, they didn't know that they had it. So I was one of those ones. They didn't know I had it. So I'd still got tested every day, but it was a lot easier to get in and out of the Palais with that health pass. So yeah, 74 films. I don't know. Do you just want me to run through my top 10 or start with a negative?
Whatever feels right to you.
God. There were some terrible films, which we kind of shot a short video about, but Nanni Moretti's 3 Floors in the competition, I absolutely hated. That was a chore to sit through. Really didn't like Jacques Audiard's Paris 13th District, which is also called Les Olympiades. Oh, just these older people talking about youth culture. Maybe you should have somebody young on hand to tell you if this makes sense at all, because it was just ridiculous about young people fucking each other in the 13th district arrondissement, and with some interesting characters, but ultimately, because it's a intersection of them all, is so superficial that all of them come across as kind of just poorly. Yeah, and there's this lesbian component to it that I thought was actually kind of troubling, because the lesbian character, who is this woman in her 30s who goes back to school, played by Noémie Merlant from Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and she goes back to law school, and she wears this shitty blonde wig out with some girls one night in her class, and all of them mistake her for some online sex worker that wears the same blonde wig. They barely look the same, but she gets made fun of so profusely that she drops out of school, but then ends up courting this sex worker online and develops a relationship with her. But the message that it sends, and I'm probably not doing the most, if you watch it, the message that it sends is she's really falling in love with her own image, which has this weird Hitchcockian element. And but is told in a way that like, oh, this is love. It was frustrating to me. But by far the worst film was Sean Penn's Flag Day. Let me ask you, do you know what Flag Day is? You were used to live in Minnesota. Did you ever see a Flag Day celebration?
I would say no, I'm not familiar. I know that I've heard of Flag Day, but I couldn't tell you what it is.
Yeah, because we all had to take civics in high school, but it's about Sean Penn as this loser father who's born on Flag Day, and he casts his daughter with Robin Wright as the lead. Ultimately, I don't think it's a really good showcase for her, or it's a camp. It's a camp delight. Let's just say that. But it was fun watching that with a later press screening where people weren't afraid to laugh a lot. So that, and not to focus on the negative, but those were three of the films that I really did not like. Like I said, having seen 74 films, I saw all of the competition films. Most of the Director's Fortnight, Un Certain Regard, a couple in the Acide, Critics Week. They had this new section this week called Cannes Premieres. So basically films that they didn't want to put in the comp, but were notable enough to be there anyway. Of those, what I did like was, and I read the novel just beforehand, Philip Roth's Deception, which Arnaud Desplechin made into film with Léa Seydoux. The film has some issues, notably that it's all in French and it's starring two French actors, and the characters are supposed to be in London and New York and are very much defined by these locations, which makes no sense. I will say I think Léa Seydoux did a really great job as that characterization, and I'm not usually a fan of Desplechin per se. I did like Oh Mercy, but it was just fine. Getting out of the negative, I really didn't like though Ari Folman's Where's Anne Frank, which he's been developing for 6 years, this animated film about Anne Frank set in modern times, told from the viewpoint of her imaginary friend Kitty, and kind of trying to draw parallels between today's refugee crisis and how refugees are treated with and the Frank family and the Holocaust, but which doesn't quite fit. I see how they tried to get there, but it doesn't quite fit. However, I was closing my eyes in that screening, and there, Karen O and Ben, oh God, what's his last name, from MGMT, composed original songs for Where's Anne Frank. I cannot wait for those to be released. I love Karen O, of Yeah Yeah Yeahs, of course, and On Her Own. The soundtrack for that is phenomenal and moody and melancholic and bittersweet, and I've been actually searching for it every day to see if there's any news about when that's coming out. But as for the film itself, I really didn't like it. Okay, so do you just want me to go through? You want me to go through my top 10?
If that's what you like.
Well, that's always fun. And then we can do the awards.
Whatever you want.
Oh, well, So you didn't read anything I wrote?
No.
Okay.
Well, a lot of my time is spent watching other things and editing videos and trying to have my own interests, so no. Well, I don't enjoy reading reviews of films I don't know or have any interest in. Mm-hmm. So I don't generally... I don't know why I would read them. But go ahead.
Okay. Number 10, A Hero, directed by Asghar Farhadi. Sorry, I just mispronounce everybody's names all the time. Farhadi, have you seen a Farhadi? No. Probably best known still for A Separation, his 2011 film, which is excellent. Won the Golden Bear, won an Oscar. He won a second Oscar for The Salesman in 2016. A Hero is definitely his best film since A Separation. Oh, sorry, I thought I had that turned off. But he's done a lot of films in France, and he did a film in Spain called Everybody Knows. It's kind of terrible. So this is a nice return to form. This kind of moral, ethical dilemma that has this extreme ripple effect that plays kind of like a thriller. Really great male lead. It did tie for the second place grand jury prize. I had a lot of conversations with people that also really didn't like it, but it is effective and well done for what it is. At the same time, he's this director that kind of is good at doing what he does, but that's auteur theory. As opposed to, I really also didn't like the new Wes Anderson, The French Dispatch, which had some love, but I couldn't have been more bored with that. And I was disappointed with myself, thinking maybe I was just cranky, maybe I was just overly tired. But I really think I've grown out of Wes Anderson, and really am looking for him to change it up a bit. That said, there are some nice things in French Dispatch. I just, considering it was held for 2 years just so it could premiere here, I was quite bored. That was my number 10 pick. Okay, number 9.
That doesn't sound like a...
Well, I went off on French Dispatch, but A Hero by Farhadi is number 10.
Oh, okay.
So, number 9. I'm trying to go through this as quickly as possible so you can not look as bored as you do. Number 9, Bergman Island, directed by Mia Hansen-Løve, her first time in the competition. You are familiar with Mia Hansen-Løve. You've seen Things to Come with Isabelle Huppert.
Mm-hmm.
This film, so I assumed it was kind of based on her own relationship she had with Olivier Assayas, who they were together for 15 years. A more notable, she was kind of under his shadow. He's a more notable, celebrated director. I believe came out as gay, although that I've just had conversations with people about that and was told that. I haven't read anything about that, but there was something that just sounded right about that. So I assumed it was about them, but then I heard from someone else that it stars Vicky Krieps and Tim Roth, about this couple, a director and his less notable, but also wife that's a director, to Bergman Island, to Faroe Island, to write screenplays for their next film. It was supposed to star Greta Gerwig, and then somebody said technically Mia Hansen-Løve was riffing on Gerwig's own experiences with Noah Baumbach. Anyhow, that is a great Vicky Krieps performance. It's kind of a film within a film, there was a lot of that actually at the film festival. It's films within a film. Great Mia Wasikowska performance as well. I enjoyed it, went home empty-handed. Number 8, Memoria, directed by Pitchapong Weerasethakul, also known as Tai Jo. He previously won the Palme for Uncle Boonmi, Who Can Recall His Past Lives. It's kind of a Pitchapong with a budget and starring Tilda Swinton, set in Colombia, as this woman who can't sleep because she hears these weird vibrations out in the universe, and it turns out that they're kind of extraterrestrial in nature. He tied for third place, jury prize, and I was probably the most relaxed after this anxiety-laden film festival coming out of that film, because I felt like I had been put in a trance. Really great. Tilda Swinton as usual. I don't know that you've seen in a Pitchapong film. I think as we were dating, I had a film night for Tropical Malady that you didn't show up to, and everybody that did come was very unhappy with me. So a Pitchapong is definitely his audience is. It's hard to indoctrinate one in him. You either really love his films or you don't, I feel. Number 7 is Mr. Sean Baker's Red Rocket, starring Simon Rex.
Okay.
Which I've been waiting to talk about that with you because I thought that you were a Simon Rex fan.
I mean...
No?
I just remember he did a solo porn video.
Okay, well that
makes me a fan.
He plays a down-and-out porn star in this that goes home to Texas with his estranged wife, who used to be a porn star, and his mother-in-law. Very gregarious performance from Simon Rex, who's kind of Dirk Diggler-esque with you know, what we eventually see. And he basically goes there to groom another young woman that, like in Tangerine, works in the donut shop, and wants to take her back to Hollywood to, you know, make her a star. It's definitely a film that I think you'd like. I know you're a fan of Sean Baker.
Okay.
Well, I guess just Tangerine. You haven't seen Starlet, so he's it's not his first foray into sex workers either. Starlet I highly recommend, starring Dree Hemingway from 2012. But this, to me, it's. But I thought this already before. Kind of one of the most exciting American indie filmmakers. If I was very happy with the award selection, but Red Rocket is one of the films that I feel like was neglected. I had predicted Simon Rex would have won Best Actor, which he didn't get, but definitely loved it. Number 6, Drive My Car by Ryusuke Hamaguchi. I actually saw this film twice in its 3 hours. I saw it at the festival, a few days passed, and I felt like I had to see it again before I reviewed it. So I actually reviewed it 2 days after I got back. Based on a couple short stories actually by Murakami. Hamaguchi, you know, already a big fan of because of Happy Hour, which I know I've talked to you about before. It's 5 hours, but excellent film. And he had a premiere in Berlin earlier this year in Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy, where he won the second place prize. He won Best Screenplay for this film. He had to edit it, so there's a final sequence set in South Korea, which kind of doesn't even make any sense. And come to find, he was told by the Terry Fremeau or the Cannes selection jury that to be in competition, he had to be under 3 hours. So it's 2 hours and 59 minutes. And I think they cut out a transitional sequence that really doesn't quite make sense. So it's odd. But obviously, really liked it. And kind of this combination of, like, Lee Chang-dong's Burning kind of collapsed Faulkner into Murakami, and this is very Anton Chekhov's Uncle Vanya and Murakami all swirled together in this weird melange of subtext and characterizations, which, you know, if you're into that, you'll love it. Number 5, Benedetta, directed by Paul Verhoeven, starring Virginia Fira and Charlotte Rampling as no-nonsense abbess who kind of steals all her scenes, I think. It's lipstick lesbian, nunsploitation for sure. Didn't win anything, but I also highly enjoyed it. I think that Verhoeven is trying to be in on the joke, so it's more poker-faced than it probably could be, and you almost see it resisting trying to be as trashy as it could be, but it's still gloriously blasphemous, and I loved it. I can't wait for you to see it as well, because I think there's a lot you will like about it. But I was glad that I read the 1986 historical book it's based on, just to see the choices that were made about what they left out, because there was some shit in about Sister Benedetta Carlini in this wedding ceremony she had with Jesus that I was really hoping they'd see, but they didn't. They didn't have that in there. Number 4 was a very difficult film to get through, and unexpected. Vortex, directed by Gaspar Noé.
That's number 4?
Yeah, did I say?
Oh.
Yeah, number 5 was...
Okay.
Basically, it's Dario Argento and Jean Lebrun, who's in The Mother and the Whore, which I need to rewatch. I haven't seen that since college. But anyway, basically this old couple that can no longer take care of themselves and are losing their minds, stuck in this apartment. And there's 2 different perspectives, like side by side, watching these people just fall apart. It's really depressing. I think in the vein of, it's an even less sentimental version than, not that I would call Haneke sentimental, but than Amour. But, and I don't know why they decide that Noé has to be programmed at fucking midnight, but movie is over 2 hours. It was, the 11 o'clock screening started an hour late. It was a trial to get through, which is why I didn't review it, because I feel like I need to see it again. But it's definitely an experience, and definitely unexpected from Gaspar Noé, who was last on hand with Climax and his kind of medium-length film Lux Eterna. Number three, The Souvenir Part 2, directed by Joanna Hogg. Follow up to, obviously, the Souvenir, again with Tilda Swinton and her daughter, Honor Swinton Byrne. Again, film within a film. It's kind of semi-autobiographical about Joanna Hogg's own career, but just really kind of masterfully done. It starts off basically right where the first one ended, where this heroin addicted boyfriend dies, and she's in film school trying to make a film about this relationship with this heroin addict. Meta in all kinds of different ways. Love the finale. I did have some interesting conversations with kind of how the film positions like racial sidekicks. Like her AD is this black guy who she the way she dates and the kind of men she's attracted to, it's just interesting how it avoids talking about certain things. It are the conversations I had about it. Also starring the Welsh director Richard Ayoade as a director of this like big budget spectacle film in late 80s London, which also doesn't really make sense. Also really flamboyant. Like all kinds of things that seem revisionist in an interesting, maybe strange way, but also just a great film in itself, The Souvenir Part 2. Number two, Titane, Julie Ducournau, who won the Palm, which we're about to get into, but it's David Cronenberg's body horror meets John Carpenter's Christine, queer gender expression film that is... it's pretty amazing. The lead star looks like this woman that stepped out of a Peaches music video that kills her parents, played by Bertrand Bonello, which is a gag in itself, and then goes off and pretends to be this boy that's been missing for a decade at the train station because she's fleeing the police after she's gone on a killing spree, shaves her head in the bathroom, binds her breasts, and says she's this kid. The fire chief, played by Vincent Lindon, is the dad and comes and looks at this human and is like, yep, that's my boy, and proceeds to take it back. And then as you come to find, he's got his own issues, injecting steroids and is out of his mind, but he basically tells this human, he's like, I don't care who you are, you're mine.
Oh.
But right before that happens, she has sex with a car. It sets up the first 20 minutes of this movie are so batshit because it just kind of sails you through this universe that makes no goddamn sense and then becomes what it is. But she has sex with this car, and then it's immediately clear based on everything leaking out of her that she's also pregnant, and her belly is expanding. So it ends with the creation of what transpired between her and that car. But yeah, just I'm very happy that won. I think it was a very daring, bold film in itself, and that it won. But my number one film was probably the most divisive film of the competition, at least. Went home empty-handed, had a lot of haters. I loved it. Bruno Dumont's France, starring Léa Seydoux. I was hoping at least, because Seydoux is in 3 films in the comp, that they would have honored her with this Best Actress, at least, because the performance, she has to cry a lot in this film. I love how it's edited. The soundtrack by Christophe, his swan song, it gives me Twin Peaks, Badalamenti, David Lynch world, kind of a statement about French news media and fake news-ish, but also this kind of riff on 1940s Hollywood women's films, women's pictures, as they used to call them. Like this could have been this. To me, she's Barbara Stanwyck in this, and I don't know. I can't wait for this to come out and watch this with you because I loved it. It was one of the few times at this festival where it's like, oh, this is the energy of weirdness and originality that I really want to see. But of course, it was met with immediate jeers and booing, and as another one of my friends at the fest said, the normies hated it. And It also, I had a lot of good conversations about it because people just really like to resist feeling weird or like they can't understand what something's about. It's like they immediately need to get it, which this film is working. Every single choice in this film in France is deliberate. It is comedic, but there's also very dark undercurrents, and I think people don't like to be unnerved by something that they can't immediately understand, which is, to me, that's what cinema is. It's not just for the moment. It's this is this immortal celluloid that it. I just hate the crack shot immediate reaction, knee-jerk reactions to that are negative. Like, clearly this director is doing something purposeful. This isn't Sean Penn's Flag Day where it's like, this is a mess. There's something going on here. Like, can you take a minute and think about it rather than just say, I don't get it, it's shit. Anyhow, that's my 2 cents on that. So that's my top 10.
All right. What's next?
The award ceremony.
Okay.
So usually I'm on a flight back by then, but this year I was like, I'm going to get early. I'm going to leave after that. So I got to sit and watch that unfold as it's happening. And, you know, really, award ceremonies aren't my thing. I could really care less. So let me first, this is how their organization of this ceremony is supposed to go. There's this lovely host who's 1 hour opening night I had to sit through before I watched the 2.5 hour in net, which made me very cranky. So she shows up again, and right away I'm like, oh God. The jury all comes out, and they're sitting out in their little places on stage. And what's supposed to happen is she asked the jury president, Spike Lee, to tell her what category they're going to introduce first. Then she announces a completely separate guest to come out, give a little speech. That guest turns to the jury. A random jury member stands up to read out who wins whatever award for that category. Person comes up, the stranger at the podium gives them the award. There's a speech, they take pictures. Totally unnecessary steps in there, so I get it. Like, why do we need Adele Exarchopoulos to come out and give whatever? So she asked Spike Lee what his first award of the night is, and he's got the little card, and he stands up, and he's like, the first award of the night, the Palme d'Or winner is Titane. And Tahar Rahim behind him and Melanie Laurent right next to him are like, everybody's just flabbergasted. And the camera they show pictures of the audience, but they don't show the Titane team to see so we don't see their immediate reaction to that. And then Spike is stuck, right? Because everybody is clustered around him, and he's stuck. The host is trying to like save face and make jokes. Adele Exarchopoulos comes out there, and Spike is stuck. Tahar Rahim comes by to like sit next to him and be in his ear because Spike shouted something like English. Like, you can tell he's stuck. Anyway, so they basically get out that I think the first award was Best Actor. So yeah, Adele Exarchopoulos comes out. They announce Best Actor goes to Caleb Landry Jones for Nitram. Caleb has to be hoisted up by the director Justin Kurzel and I don't know who else, the producers. Looks like he's dying. He looks white as a ghost. He looks mentally ill. He gets up on stage looking like an amphibian and is like, I can't do this. I'm gonna throw up. Like, he's doubled over, taking pictures. He looks insane. So that's the first award that officially goes out. God, then what happened next? It was further complicated because this very generous jury gave out 2 ties. They gave out 2 ties for third place, 2 ties for second place. The 2 ties for third place were Pitchpong and Nadav Lapid for Ahed's knee. Nadav Lapid is all weird. They're all weird about sharing the award because they don't give them both one thing to hold. They have to share it between them. So then there's weirdness between Nadav Lapid about that. Then Oliver Stone gets out there to give an award because he's on hand for a new JFK documentary he had at the festival. Oliver Stone goes off script, just talking. And then he's like, the grand prize has Oh, it's always been a prestigious award ever since it's been created. Yeah, dude, it's the second place prize, of course. And then he's like, some would say it's an award that lives in the shadow of the Palme d'Or. Yeah, man. So then he goes, okay, I'm going to turn to the jury and ask them what their next category is. And the host is like, in English, he goes, yeah, ask the jury. Just okay. So, ah, um, and then I think we were also giddy sitting there watching it. By the time Sharon Stone gets out there to be the guest that is there for the Palme d'Or, Sharon gets out there and maybe can't see the teleprompter correctly, so she's doing this thing where she looks like Norma Desmond ready for her close-up. Uh, Insanity reading the teleprompter, and there was nothing wrong with how she looked insane. It was kind of a beautiful train wreck all the way around. So then, of course, they announce she gets Spike up there. Spike's next to her, and she's like, "Are you ready? Are you ready to say the Palme d'Or?" And then, Julie DeCorno comes out and I thought gave a really lovely speech, and she said, tonight's so perfect because of how imperfect it is, and just how surreal this has been. And she made sure to say that all in English, I think. Then she's like, and then reversed to French. But yeah, I was very happy. One of the most entertaining moments of the festival was that. And I feel like I'm missing some other kind of bits of weirdness that happened, but it was awkward. And I don't know if the festival organizers didn't kind of tell Spike how this was supposed to go down, or
Yeah.
but I felt bad for him because the jury members around him, like Melanie Laurent, she even said she got up to announce something. She's like, "What would we have without a little mess?" You could tell that they were trying to comfort him, but he was pretty stuck for a minute.
Aww.
Because it's not as bad as like the Moonlight fiasco at the Oscars, but it's still pretty like, oh, you just ruined the big surprise.
It's hard to coordinate any event, any sort of thing where there's a schedule and time constraints and an order that needs to occur, and then oftentimes these things don't have any rehearsal.
Right, yeah.
So, it's, and, organizing all of these people to show up at one place at the same time, that in itself is a miracle. So the fact that it even runs moderately smoothly is impressive, but I think to have a few missteps doesn't seem unreasonable.
And the host, I thought, really did a good job of kind of making that work. And he actually messed up again. Spike Lee did at the end. She had to like run over there. She had to run across the stage to kind of like redirect whatever he was about to say again, because he. I think the French was just throwing him.
Well, is that all you have for Cannes?
I mean, there's more. I felt like you were bored, so I was rushing.
Well, it's not that I'm bored. It's just I didn't experience it, and so it's your experience to share with the people, not me. So,
oh well, so
you have like 20 minutes.
I mean.
Is there anything else that sticks out to you? Your hopes for the next film festival you attend, if you do attend one, or?
Well, yeah. I'm hoping that next year, Cannes in July was hot. It was too hot. So I'm looking forward to that going back to May, and hopefully by then we have all this QR code business figured out. Something's going to have to happen about these people that don't want to get vaccinated and think that they can still go out there and, I guess, walk amongst us vampires, because this mixture is not going to work, because it impinges on everything, because shit keeps getting spread. But that said, I'm going to be covering Locarno, which remotely. TIFF probably remotely. Venice I do have a hope to go to for the first time, maybe for part of it, because just logistically I had kind of wanted to be in Serbia around that as well. I'm trying to think if there was a surprising amount of, I think there were 5 lesbian films technically in the competition, which I thought was interesting. And as for like gay male content, there were a couple things in certain regard, including The Great Freedom, that I did really like, starring Franz Rogowski, who you just saw in Undina, playing this artist, Michael, is it Hoffman, who was in Auschwitz. He was in some concentration camp because he was gay, but then because of paragraph 175, when after liberation, he was just immediately put off in prison. Serve a sentence. But it's basically about him being released and going back to prison basically throughout his whole life because of paragraph 175 not being lifted. And then he's in prison and reads a news article about how that law has been abolished. So he's released and he goes to this gay bar called The Great Freedom, where everybody's behaving and treating each other just like they do in prison.
Which is what?
Kind of like he goes to this in the bar, there's an underground sex area. Just basically the same level of kind of impersonal, sexual gratification. And then immediately leaves that bar and goes and breaks his storefront windows so he can go back to prison.
Oh.
Because he's been inside so long. I think that won a prize out in a certain regard. There was also an interesting Chinese film, Money Boys, about male hookers. It gets a little long in the tooth, but it starts out very interesting. It's about these two sex workers that are hired for this orgy, and they fall in love. But the younger, newer one, something happens where he's robbed or something, and the man that does him wrong, the lover goes and tries to beat him up and gets his knees pulverized with a sledgehammer. And becomes this eventually a married father of children singing on the street. Anyhow, there was it's just interesting that there were so many kind of lesbian films. Oh, and you know what? It's also interesting to see how the Verhoeven film, how the male gaze, I think, in direct comparison to something like Titan, where there are lesbian sex scenes, that just how differently those play from a woman versus a man filming these two very sexy, like, live young women. But yeah, I don't know. I feel.
Well, any other topics you want to bring up while you have a little time? They don't have to be can related.
Sorry, I feel like I could have gone through every competition film, but that's probably not. Probably not. Well, it's hard because I can't really engage you because you don't have anything to say.
Well,
Well, beyond that, usually we also have time to watch other things, which we really didn't this week, catching up. Because of the rising Delta variant, they aren't allowing guests to physical screening, so you didn't get to see Old or the G.I. Joe movie. But we did watch, well, you watched part of Night Falls on Manhattan last night, the Sidney Lumet film from 1996.
Yeah.
Which wasn't very... It had some interesting elements about police brutality and, of course, corruption in the judicial system, but really fizzles out by the end and wastes Lena Olin, which to me is kind of a sacrilege in itself. But we really haven't had time to watch anything else besides, I guess, I had to cram in a bunch of Rupaul's Drag Race when I got back.
Oh.
And I don't know, you haven't really told me anything you've watched.
I don't think I've watched anything.
You haven't watched anything?
No. I mean, I watch random things on TV, but...
Oh.
Like, I haven't sat down to watch a movie and fully pay attention.
No scripted television?
No.
Well, because you didn't follow anything about my coverage, the Cannes Film Festival, anything.
Well, I'm not interested, so no. Like... So no, I don't ever do that. It's just a lot. I think it's funny that you assume that I already invest so much time into cinema that I'm not particularly interested in, and then I would invest even more time into even more obscure selections that I don't know anything about. No, I don't. Yeah, in general, I think my interest in film, well, it's very rare that I'm excited to see a movie. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, if I watch maybe like 5% of the films I actually watch, 5% of the films I watch, maybe I'm like, of all of the films I watch, maybe 5% I had like interest in before,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, yeah, it's hard for me to get excited about so many. Your enthusiasm for cinema far exceeds mine.
Sure, but I mean, it's
And the
also
way you talk about cinema, we all have different learning styles, and my learning style is very different from yours. So the way you explain things to me doesn't connect with my like learning style.
hmm
So a lot of what you say to me feels like you explaining things to me feels like I stood in front of a fire hydrant and someone undid the fire hydrant, and it's just I'm being blasted with so much that I
hmm
don't even know. And then you like to relay about directors and writers and actors who I don't know. So it's just like, well, it's hard for me to connect with any of that.
hmm
But I think for the purpose of the podcast, it makes sense because I'm certain anyone who'd want to listen to this is very interested in those details. So in that regard, it's very relevant. But to me, it's like, well, certain things pique my interest.
hmm
So you don't often switch your approach when explaining things to me specifically.
hmm
Like like how you just did it makes sense for this,
Sure.
obviously. But like trying to get me interested in a film is like, well, if I don't know the director or their previous movie or the star, then how does that bear any weight into what I would? So then reading these, you're a very good writer, but it's very detailed, very specific. I don't know almost like I wouldn't know most of the references or so. Yeah.
hmm
It's almost like reading something in like it's like my comprehension of Spanish is like intermediate, and then it's like giving me like a novel to read in Spanish. Like, well, I'm gonna get a little bit of it, but it's not gonna be very satisfying because I don't understand the nuances and the details.
hmm
So
So it's work.
I don't mind work. It's just not of interest, and then it's more like it's not in the style that would appeal to me.
hmm
So, but I think that's probably why we complement each other well because we offer different things and we have different approaches to how we explain things. So when it's combined, it's I think it's very effective.
Sure. Well,
But good for you. You like going to film festivals. You like tormenting yourself with all of this stuff.
well,
And
no, it's not torment. I think just
oh well, you could say it's not torment, but the way you describe it as it's happening, it sounds like it's just this overwhelming, like exhausting process.
well, I mean, there were to be fair. Oh, I didn't even bring up the ticketing system. They implemented a ticketing system in Cannes, which in theory is really good, but then the site kept crashing at 7 a.m. because you could only get tickets 48 hours in advance, and there was reduced press presence there this year, so there was essentially there was no problem getting tickets. It's just that when they became available, the site kept crashing because everybody and their mother was trying to get these tickets. So they really need to work out those kinks. That said, I think it did greatly reduce waiting in lines. Even if you have a really good badge, which I do at Cannes, it still greatly reduced having to wait in lines, which based on the weather and of course the pandemic, that was helpful.
Another thing I'm thinking is like my disinterest in attending film festivals is also based on this idea that like watching more than like one movie a day seems for me unrealistic because it's like my synapses get overloaded
Sure.
and it's like I can't really like watching 6 movies in a day. It's like how could I even distinguish one from the next? And anyone who knows me, especially you, would know that like everything's affected by my mood.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't imagine like being tired, being annoyed from the previous film, being like on a high from laughing so much from one screening to then transition to something that's more somber.
Mm-hmm.
Like my perception of it would just be so skewed that I don't even know how it would make sense for me to watch multiple films a day for me. For me.
It is. I mean, it's work.
So to fly like across the world and to watch 40 movies just would not
Well,
or 70 or 60 just seems like probably the worst time I could have.
plus making time to write and or
Yeah.
eat and shower.
That is the opposite of what sounds like joy to me. So I would much rather take 2 weeks and just go off and just be by myself and just relax because I can't ever do that. But I think that's great that you find this very enjoyable. And good. Someone needs to because people have to go and watch these movies. And I will say to not end on such a negative note, because I probably do sound negative, is there's so many talented artists out there, like filmmakers, right? Like directors, cinematographers, art, actors, sound people, hair and makeup who work on all these projects that most of us will never get to see. So it's important that we have these film festivals because they give some exposure. And then I think it's even more important that there are people out there who take the time to watch them to then try to spread the word, right? Because if people like you didn't go to these film festivals and write about these things, then how would anyone know?
Well, that's the other thing. I think it's important to be. I mean, not that I don't think that I'm special or important. I think that the duty I feel I enjoy it, but also the duty of writing and defending things that like the core, all the main players seem to disparage or dismiss. Like that we need different viewpoints and we need authentic viewpoints. A lot of conversations I had with a lot of popular, I'm not going to name names, but like popular people, critics on various outlets and on Twitter that have amassed like kind of huge followings over the past several years are all fake. Like their opinions are fake. And they will freely admit that to you in conversation in person, that the persona that they are employing is, a sellout, but also to get, which is a means to their end. So I think to me, it feels important to be out there saying what I actually feel and mean, not being beholden to anyone or any particular human that besides you that is genuinely saying what I mean. This is my genuine opinion, and I think that I live my life like that as well. But to me, it feels like such a rarity, and like luckily I've done this long enough where at all these venues I've kind of have found a handful of people that are similar in tone or intention, which makes it bearable, because otherwise it's a very lonely experience to go there and just have Holden Caulfield syndrome.
It is a business, and I understand that. And I think for some people, their entire livelihood relies on them playing a game, right?
Yeah.
So then when we think about like who's distributing a film and parent companies and the different publications they own, and when you see like a major publication saying that a crap movie is like the movie of the year, it's like, well, yeah, because the parent company owns the publication and funded the movie. And you would think that the general public understands that, but
They don't.
well, and I don't know that they don't. It's just like people don't care, right? Like most people aren't as invested in cinema as you are. So it's just like, oh, whatever is number one this week at the box office, whatever is like, easy peasy, I'll go see. And I think that's fair if you don't care about cinema, but I think it's a very interesting thing. The more I like learn about filmmaking and the industry, that it is kind of a game, or I mean, it is a business, so there is a game to it. But again, the fact that there are so many talented people out there persevering and making quality content, it's great that there are venues where these works can get attention. So I think it's wonderful. I wish I'm hoping that film festivals become more of like a destination where like people, like the mainstream public, can.
Well, like TIFF is very easy.
But even like, let's say Sundance, it's like, okay, so Sundance, really any festival, but it's like every festival has their own sort of like angle, and that the like mainstream audiences can then say, okay, for this week of this festival, we have access to these films, right? We buy access, we buy tickets, and we watch these films we wouldn't normally see. And I'm hoping with streaming at home becoming more popular, that maybe people will broaden their horizons and check out
Well, kind of like how Sundance did this year.
I really like that. I really like having access to like a myriad of things. And I think part of the, my enthusiasm for cinema waned a very long time ago because I'm just overwhelmed and fatigued by it. But I remember years ago, like getting the chance to look through like a book, like a program book. And
Yeah.
like the first time I went to TIFF, I think.
The only time.
The only time.
2010.
And like going through the book. Or Berlin, didn't I go through that? And I went through the Poland one. Like just saying like which films would I want to see. I actually thought that was kind of fun. Like that process of like, oh, there's so many options. I get to choose. I like that. Versus like getting on, any whatever streaming platform we have and feeling so limited. Like, well, it's all the same basic shit or like.
Well, because this is an event too, and it's been curated to suggest that these are contemporary quality offerings.
That's what I mean. I think these film festivals should sort of have an angle where the whatever the angle is, we know that it was curated with care. So, like, what's the one for horror? Fantasia?
Fantasia or Stitches, yeah.
It's like, yeah, it would be so cool if like the public could have access to those, which I don't know that they don't, but and knowing that whatever is part of that festival is quality, because then it's like, oh, how fun to have like 100 selections, which, are there 100 quality horror films every year? Probably not. But
No.
but even if they only have 20, it's like, okay, well, I paid for a 4-ticket bundle and I get to read through these 20 films. I think that's really exciting, but we need to end this. Do you have any final words?
Oh, I was thinking we probably should have talked about Lamb with Noomi Rapace, where she has the half lamb, half human baby, but
that was
a big ticket, a high profile item that I thought kind of fizzled out, and despite its scenario was very basic.
Oh.
But I think you'll get a kick out of it when we watch it. There's some good visual gags.
Okay, well, do you want to say bye?
Yeah, bye.
Bye.